The alien girl's heart raced as she watched the last piece of her ship fall to the planet's surface. Her once pristine spacecraft, which had carried her across the galaxy, was now a twisted heap of metal and smoke. She had no idea where she was. The stars she'd seen through the window were now just distant pinpricks in the sky. The ground beneath her feet was alien, unfamiliar. The crash had been violent. Her body ached, but the adrenaline rushing through her veins kept her moving. She didn't have time to rest. She didn't know if there were other survivors from her ship, but it didn't matter. Her main priority was to find shelter and figure out what to do next. She stood up shakily, dusting off the dirt from her body. Her eyes scanned the strange landscape. The trees here were unlike anything she had seen before, tall and thin with purple leaves that shimmered under the bright orange sun. The sky above her had a deep teal color, and strange swirling clouds seemed to dance across the horizon. There were no familiar landmarks, no signs of human life, just an empty, vast wilderness. She took a deep breath, hoping to calm herself. But the air was heavy with the scent of something sweet and sharp. She glanced around, her instincts on high alert. Everything seemed oddly still, yet she could feel the earth tremble beneath her feet. Was it just her imagination? No. Something was moving in the distance, just beyond the thick cluster of trees. Without hesitation, she began walking toward the edge of the forest. Each step felt more treacherous than the last. The ground beneath her was soft and spongy, making it difficult to walk with any real speed. The tall, glowing plants around her looked harmless, but she knew better than to trust appearances. She had survived on many planets, and the universe was full of dangerous surprises. As she ventured deeper into the unknown, she heard a faint sound, a growl, or perhaps a roar. It came from the woods ahead. She stopped in her tracks, her body freezing as she tried to assess where the sound was coming from. The sound was distant, but it was unmistakable. Someone was out there. Her heart beat faster now, her senses sharper than ever. She had to find shelter, and fast. The growl she had heard was not an animal sound she was familiar with. It was more menacing, more predatory. She continued moving cautiously, her eyes scanning the trees, the strange, glowing plants, and the darkening sky above her. The thick mist in the air made it harder to see, but she didn't dare slow down. Her gaze shifted to the ground, where large tracks, almost like paw prints, were imprinted in the soil. The tracks were fresh, leading straight into the forest. She swallowed hard, unsure of whether to follow them or turn back. The growl she had heard earlier echoed in the distance once more, this time much closer. Something was out there. She was not alone. As the sky dimmed, a cold shiver ran down her spine. She had been trained to handle every kind of terrain, every kind of environment, but this was different. The planet was alive in a way she couldn't explain. The trees, the plants, the air, it was all connected, and it felt as if it was watching her, waiting. Her feet moved on their own, now faster than before, carrying her through the thickening mist. The sound of her own breath filled her ears. Her mind raced with thoughts of escape, but she knew there was no way out, not yet. Her ship was a wreck, and she didn't even know how far she had traveled from it. She could feel the pull of the planet beneath her, the pressure of something ancient and powerful pushing her forward. Suddenly, a shadow moved in the corner of her vision. She whipped her head to the side, her body going rigid. Her eyes darted from one side of the clearing to the other, searching for the source. She could see nothing, only the glowing plants swaying gently in the breeze. But the feeling, it was growing stronger. Someone or something was watching her. Following her every move, she took a step back, ready to defend herself, but just as she did, the ground beneath her feet trembled again. This time the sound was louder, more intense. Her pulse quickened, and she instinctively crouched low to the ground, her eyes locked on the dense trees ahead. It was then that she saw it. A massive figure, large, covered in dark scales, emerged from behind the trees. The creature's eyes glowed with an eerie light, and its long, jagged claws scraped the earth as it slowly advanced toward her. It was a predator, one she had never seen before. And it was hungry. Her breath caught in her throat as the beast's eyes fixed on her. She could feel its gaze, its deadly intent, as if the creature could sense her every movement. Panic surged in her chest, and her mind raced to think of an escape. There was no way she could outrun this thing. But then, something caught her eye. In the distance, there was a small opening in the side of a hill. It was her only chance. Without thinking, she turned and ran. Her legs moved faster than they had ever moved before, each step a blur as she sprinted toward the cave. Behind her, the creature roared, its heavy footsteps shaking the ground. She didn't look back, but she could hear it getting closer. The cave was just ahead, but she wasn't sure if she would make it in time. Her body screamed for her to slow down, but she pushed herself harder, forcing her legs to move faster, even as the world around her seemed to spin. She could feel the hot breath of the creature on her neck, could hear the snapping of its claws as they scraped against the ground. Just as she reached the entrance of the cave, she dove forward, landing hard on the cold stone floor. She quickly scrambled to her feet, her heart pounding in her chest. The creature stopped at the entrance, snarling in frustration. It couldn't get inside. For now, she was safe. But she knew this was just the beginning. Something more dangerous awaited her on this planet, something far worse than the beast that had chased her, and she was going to have to face it alone. The alien girl sat in the dark, her back pressed against the cool stone of the cave wall. The creature had long since retreated into the forest, its growls fading into the distance. But she didn't feel safe. She knew it wasn't over.
Ow.
Feel the planet's strange pulse beneath her feet, as though the land itself was alive, watching her every move. For now, though, she had managed to escape. She took a deep breath, allowing herself a brief moment of calm. Her eyes adjusted to the darkness, and she began to search her surroundings. The cave was small, its walls lined with sharp rocks and strange symbols carved deep into the surface. But it was shelter, and she needed to rest. She couldn't stay here forever, though. She stood up cautiously, her muscles sore from the crash, but the chill of the cave helped dull the pain. Her instincts told her to move. She needed to find supplies, something to help her survive on this unknown world. But she wasn't sure where to go. The planet was vast, its landscape unfamiliar, and she had no map. She had to explore. Before she left, she glanced outside the cave's entrance. The night was falling fast. The sky was darker now, the glowing purple trees swaying gently in the breeze, their twisted branches seemingly reaching toward her. There was something eerie about the way the forest stood in the dim light, as though it had a life of its own. As she stepped out, the air was thick with moisture, the ground still soft and spongy under her boots. She had no choice but to keep moving. She had to find out what this planet had to offer and if it offered anything useful. She ventured deeper into the forest, her senses heightened, her mind alert for any sounds, any signs of danger. The trees around her were unlike any she had seen before. Their bark glistened, as if it had a sheen to it. The leaves, bright against the dimming sky, fluttered gently in the wind. It was beautiful, but also unnerving. Suddenly, she felt something shift in the air, a change in the atmosphere that made her skin prickle. It was as though the very air around her had thickened, pressing in on her from all sides. Then she heard it. The soft rustling of leaves, but not from the trees. This sound was different. It was closer, and it was alive. She stopped in her tracks, her breath shallow. She strained her ears to listen. A low, almost melodic hum filled the air, growing louder by the second. She couldn't tell where it was coming from, but it seemed to surround her. The ground beneath her feet trembled slightly, as if in response to the sound. She turned slowly, scanning the environment. That's when she saw it. A giant, pulsating plant. It was enormous, towering above the other trees. Its thick green tendrils twisted upward, entwining with the branches of the surrounding trees. The plant seemed to shimmer, its surface rippling with an otherworldly glow, as if it were alive with energy. The hum she had heard earlier came from within it, like a deep, rhythmic pulse. But that wasn't the most unsettling part. The plants. Flowers, massive, bright yellow blooms, opened and closed like the mouth of some giant creature. And then she saw something else, a flicker of movement deep inside one of the petals. It was alive. She took a cautious step forward, curiosity overcoming her fear. She wasn't sure what the plant was, but she had seen many strange creatures in her travels. The question wasn't whether it was dangerous. She knew it was. The real question was how dangerous it could be. She studied the plant closely. Its leaves stretched wide, like the arms of a welcoming creature, but the way they bent toward her gave off a sinister vibe. The tendrils that curled around the base of the plant looked like they were waiting, coiled and ready to strike. Her thoughts raced. Could it be a carnivorous plant? She had read about them in her studies, but never anything so massive. This plant seemed different, alive in a way that was more terrifying than any creature she had ever encountered. Before she could take another step, the plant reacted. The flowers snapped open, revealing a dark maw hidden within, like a gaping mouth waiting for a victim. The tendrils whipped into motion, lashing out toward her. Her instincts kicked in. She jumped back just as one of the tendrils brushed against her arm, sending a sharp pain through her body. The plant wasn't just trying to capture her, he was hunting her. She stumbled backward, barely avoiding another strike. The plant's tendrils slithered across the ground, their movements unnervingly fast. She realized that it wasn't just the flowers that were dangerous, the entire plant was a deadly trap. Without thinking, she turned and bolted, the sound of the plant's tendrils crashing through the underbrush behind her, filling the air. She didn't dare look back, but she could hear the plant following, its pursuit relentless. The forest around her seemed to close in, as if the planet itself were closing the path behind her. She weaved through the glowing trees, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The plant was fast, but she had to keep moving. There was no time to lose. She could feel its presence, the constant hum of its energy just behind her. Her legs burned with exhaustion, but she pushed on, refusing to slow down. The world around her began to blur, the vibrant colors of the plants and trees flashing past her as she sprinted. Finally, she saw at the edge of the forest, where the trees thinned out, revealing an open field. But just as she thought she might escape, she felt a sharp tug at her ankle. A tendril had wrapped around her leg, pulling her backward. She screamed, fighting to break free, but the plant's grip was strong, unyielding. It was going to drag her back into the heart of the forest. She had moments left to escape, and she didn't know how she was going to survive this. The darkness of the forest seemed to swallow her whole. The alien girl's world was swallowed by darkness. One moment she was running, heart racing, trying to escape the deathly grip of the giant carnivorous plant. The next, she was engulfed in the cold, suffocating clutches of its mouth. Her vision blurred as she was pulled deeper into the plant, its tendrils tightening around her, pushing her toward the black abyss that was its digestive chamber. The air inside the plant was thick and stagnant, heavy with the scent of decay. She tried to scream, but the sounds were muffled by the oppressive walls of the plant. Her body struggled to breathe as the strange fluids within the plant's mouth began to seep into her suit, burning through the fabric like acid. Panic surged through her chest, and she fought against the vines that gripped her limbs. She kicked, twisted, and struggled, but the more she fought, the tighter the plant squeezed, as though it were savoring her resistance. The darkness inside was so thick she could no longer see her hand in front of her face. It was a suffocating, choking kind of dark, pressing down on her as the plant's inner chambers closed in on her. Her breath came in shallow gasps. She could feel the slick, slimy walls of the plant's throat closing in around her, as though it was determined to devour her whole. Her body tensed, every muscle fighting against the inevitable, but there was no escape. The plant was too powerful, its hold too strong. The more she struggled, the more she was pulled in. The acidic liquid began to eat away at her suit. The heat was unbearable, her skin burning where the plant's juices touched it. She screamed in agony, but her voice was swallowed by the dark, thick atmosphere surrounding her. The air in the plant's stomach was almost unbearable. Like a heavy weight pressing down on her chest, her mind raced as she fought to stay conscious, to think of a way out. But the longer she remained trapped inside the plant, the more hopeless it seemed. Time seemed to stretch, every second feeling like an eternity. She was being slowly consumed by a force far stronger than her own. I can't die like this, she thought desperately. Not here, not now. I won't be swallowed by this monster. But there was nothing she could do. The plant was alive, and it seemed to know exactly what it was doing. Its digestive juices began to work faster, eroding her suit and weakening her body. She could feel her energy draining, and her limbs became heavier, slower. Claiming her piece by piece, she could do nothing to stop it, just as she felt herself losing consciousness. Her mind flashing between fragments of her past, something happened. She felt the plant's grip loosen, just for a moment. Her heart skipped a beat. Could it be? Was it letting her go? But no, it wasn't that simple. The plant was simply adjusting its position, making her more comfortable, readying her for the next step. Her body was now almost completely inside its stomach, the acid burning her skin even more. The alien girl felt the last of her strength. Draining away, she closed her eyes, praying for a miracle that would never come. That was when she heard it. A loud, shrill crack echoed through the thick darkness, followed by a heavy thud. Her heart raced again, this time not from fear, but from hope. What was that sound? Before she could process it, she felt a sudden jolt. The plant's grip on her slackened, as if startled by something or someone. She gasped in surprise, the last of her energy flooding her body. She was being pulled, yanked out of the plant's grasp. It was a human voice, a voice she had heard earlier. In the distance, "Hold on," came the cry, the sound muffled but clear. A strong hand grabbed hers, pulling her with a force that cut through the plant's insides like a knife. She clung to the hand, her muscles working in sync with the human strength. The tendrils around her began to panic, retracting quickly as if trying to hold her back. But the human was relentless. With every pull, the tendrils loosened their grip, their hold weakening. The alien girl gasped, feeling the fresh air of freedom, the breath of life she had almost lost forever. With one final desperate yank, the human dragged her free from the plant's clutches. She collapsed into the arms of the rescuer. The ground beneath her firm and solid. Her chest heaved as she struggled to regain control of her breathing. Her skin still burned where the plant's digestive fluids had touched, but she was alive. She was free. The human looked down at her, their face a mix of concern and relief. Their eyes were filled with worry, but there was something else, something almost unspoken. They had saved her, but they had also risked their life to do it. The alien girl felt a wave of gratitude wash over her, but the relief didn't last long. The danger wasn't over. The planet, with all its deadly creatures and terrifying plants, still lurked in the shadows, waiting to claim its next victim. The human pulled her to her feet, his grip firm but gentle. They didn't speak immediately, as though words were unnecessary for the moment. The alien girl's heart was still racing, but now it was from the rush of survival. The shock of narrowly escaping death. "We need to move," the human said, breaking the silence, his voice low but urgent. "The plant isn't done with us." Yet, and just like that, she realized the truth. The fight wasn't over. The alien world that had nearly claimed her life was still waiting for them. The alien girl blinked rapidly, her mind racing to catch up with the reality of her narrow escape. She had been swallowed alive by that monstrous plant, its tendrils wrapping around her like a nightmare. But now, she was standing alive, gasping for air, and in the presence of someone she hadn't expected to see, a human. Her legs felt like they might collapse under her, but the strong grip of her rescuer steadied her. She looked up at the human, a man, tall, with dark hair, his eyes intense but calm, scanning the surroundings with practiced caution. He wasn't wearing a spacesuit, but instead, tattered clothes covered in dirt and dried leaves. His hands, rough from survival, gently helped her regain her balance. She didn't have time for introductions or questions. The eerie hum of the plant behind them was growing louder. The beast had not given up its prey. The air around them thickened as though the plant could sense the disturbance. It was coming for them. The man's eyes locked onto hers, and he seemed to read the panic in her face, without her having to say a word. Without hesitation, He grabbed her by the arm and pulled her forward, toward the dense forest. "We don't have much time," he said in a low voice, urgency thick in his tone. She stumbled to keep up, her body still weak from the ordeal, but her instincts kicked in. She followed him without question, knowing that if she stopped now, the plant would have her again. The man's pace was fast, his steps confident. He clearly knew the terrain, and though she was far from fully recovered, she had no choice but to trust him. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice hoarse from the dry air of the plant's stomach, still clinging to her lungs. The man glanced at her briefly, then back at the darkening forest ahead. "It's not important right now. We need to keep moving." His answer wasn't what she had hoped for, but it didn't matter. She wasn't in a position to ask for explanations. She was just thankful he had been there when she needed him most. They moved quickly, the dense forest closing in around them as the sounds of the planet grew louder. It was as though the very world around them was alive, watching them. The low hum of the plant's energy still vibrated in the air, a reminder of how close death had come to claiming her. They reached the edge of a large clearing. The man finally stopped. He turned, pulling her into the shadow of a nearby tree. They crouched low, the thick underbrush concealing their movements. She caught her breath and looked at him again, this time taking in his features. His eyes, dark and calculating, seemed to reflect something deep inside him, an experience, a past that had hardened him into the person he was today. There was a weariness in his gaze, but also a fire that could not be extinguished. She spoke again, more quietly this time.
"Ow. Why did you help me?"
His face softened for a moment, but only briefly. He didn't look at her immediately, as if gathering the right words. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter, almost guarded. "I've seen too many people lost to this planet. We all have our reasons for surviving." There was a long silence between them, but it was filled with unspoken understanding. Whatever his reasons were, she could sense they were deeper than just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Before she could ask more, a sharp rustling broke through the silence, followed by the unmistakable sound of snapping branches. Heart skipped a beat. The plantor, something else, was close. Her rescuer's eyes darted toward the sound, his expression hardening. "Stay quiet," he ordered softly, before he motioned for her to move deeper into the forest. She followed, heart pounding as the sounds of pursuit grew louder. The man led her toward a cluster of large, hollowed-out trees that appeared to be natural shelters. There were no signs of life, but that didn't ease her fear. She could sense the creatures around them, watching, waiting. They crouched in one of the trees, hidden from view. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth, and the tension in the atmosphere was palpable. The plant's roars had stopped. For now, but she knew it wasn't gone. It was just waiting for the right moment to strike. "Why didn't you leave?" she finally asked, her voice trembling slightly as she gathered the courage to speak again. "You could have escaped too." The man was silent for a moment. Then he replied in a voice that sounded almost regretful. "I couldn't just let it take another life." He paused and then added, "I've lost too much already." The words hung heavy between them. She could sense that there was more to his story, but she didn't press him. For now, the most important thing was survival. They waited in silence, hours stretching on, until the sound of the plant's pursuit began to fade. It was still out there, but it had been diverted. At least for now. The man finally broke the silence, his voice calm but urgent. "We need to move again. The plant's not the only thing you need to worry about on this planet." She glanced up at him, unsure of what he meant. But the look in his eyes told her that there was a far greater danger lurking, one that wasn't just the result of a few terrifying plants. The forest, with its towering trees and strange creatures, held secrets that were darker than anything she could have imagined. And now, she was stuck here with this mysterious human who seemed to know more about survival than he was letting on. There was no turning back. They were both trapped on this alien world, and it seemed that fate had brought them together for a reason. Whatever was out there, whatever dangers awaited them, they would have to face them together. The journey was just beginning. The quiet was deafening. After escaping the deadly grasp of the carnivorous plant and narrowly dodging whatever else the planet had in store, the alien girl found herself standing in a clearing, unsure of how much further she could go. The silence was unnatural heavy, suffocating. She could feel the weight of the planet pressing down on her, like the ground itself was watching her every move. The human beside her wasn't speaking either, his face set in an unreadable expression as he scanned the horizon. His eyes were sharp, constantly searching for any sign of danger. Every few seconds, he would glance at her, as though making sure she was still with him. She felt the weight of his watchful gaze, a reminder that he wasn't just rescuing her, he was keeping her alive. "How much farther?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. He didn't answer immediately, instead motioning for her to follow him deeper into the dense underbrush. The forest here felt different. The trees grew taller, their trunks wrapped in vines that moved like snakes, creeping around one another, twisting and stretching. "There's no safe place on this planet," he finally said, his voice low and gritty. "You learn to survive by being faster, smarter, ... and ruthless." The words sent a chill through her. She had already seen the dangers of the plant and the creatures lurking nearby. But the man's tone made it clear there were more threats she hadn't even begun to understand. Whatever dangers lay ahead, she knew she wasn't ready for them. But she didn't have a choice. Survival meant facing them head-on. Suddenly, the stillness was shattered. A sharp snap echoed from behind them, followed by the sound of something large moving through the forest, pushing aside the thick foliage. The human immediately pulled her to the side, his hand gripping her wrist with surprising strength. "Sst, close," he whispered, his eyes scanning the area. They crouched low, hidden behind a large boulder covered in strange moss. The air was thick with tension. She could hear the unmistakable sound of large footsteps, too heavy to be a creature of the forest. Something far worse was coming their way. Without a word, the human reached into his bag and pulled out a long, jagged blade, a weapon she hadn't noticed before. It looked like it had been fashioned from the sharpest rocks and materials of the planet. He handed it to her, his eyes locking onto hers. "Keep it close. Don't hesitate. Whatever comes, you fight." Before she could respond, a dark shadow moved across their hiding place, casting a long, chilling shadow over the ground. The creature's growls rumbled in. The distance so low, they felt like vibrations in the air. It was drawing closer, its massive body shifting between the trees. Her pulse quickened. Her fingers tightened around the blade. "What is it?" she whispered, her throat dry. "Something that feeds on fear," the human muttered, eyes narrowed. "We're its prey." The ground shook again as the creature stepped closer, and she could hear the slithering of something else. A dozen smaller creatures moving quickly on the forest floor. The hair on the back of her neck stood up. They were surrounded. In a flash, the creature appeared from the darkness. It was enormous, more than twice the size of the human, and covered in thick, dark scales that gleamed under the weak light. Its long, barbed tail whipped through the air, snapping like a whip. Its eyes glowed an unsettling green, fixed directly on them. With a deafening roar, it lunged toward them, its sharp claws scraping against the bark of nearby trees as it closed the distance. The human moved first, swift and graceful despite his size, darting forward to meet the creature's attack head-on. The alien girl watched in disbelief as he collided with the beast, its blade sinking into the creature's thick hide, but not deep enough to stop it. Her heart pounded in her chest. She hesitated for just a second, too overwhelmed to think. Then the beast's claws swung toward the human, aiming for his chest. Without thinking, she stepped forward, the blade in her hand trembling with fear, and drove it straight into the creature's side. It howled in pain, but the sound was deafening, rattling her bones. The creature turned toward her, its face twisted in rage, its breath hot and foul. "Run!" the human shouted. "Now!" But she couldn't. Her body froze, locked in place by the sheer size and terror of the beast. The creature opened its mouth wide, revealing rows of jagged teeth that could tear through anything in its path. It growled, ready to strike. In that moment, the alien girl realized something. Survival wasn't just about strength. It was about taking risks, about using everything around her to her advantage. The blade in her hand wasn't enough to defeat the creature on its own. But she had to find another way. She glanced around quickly, spotting a nearby vine hanging from one of the trees, thick and strong. In a burst of inspiration, she ran toward it, grabbing hold and swinging herself onto the creature's back. The beast snarled and tried to shake her off, but she wrapped her legs around its neck and held on tightly. With all the strength she could muster, she pulled herself closer to its head, plunging the blade into the creature's eye. The beast roared in agony, thrashing violently beneath her, but she held on, twisting the blade deeper into its skull. The human's voice echoed behind her. "Finish it." With one final push, she drove the blade in deeper, and the creature went still. Its enormous body slumped to the ground, lifeless. She let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding and stumbled backward, finally releasing the blade. The forest around them was eerily quiet once again, save for the distant sounds of other creatures moving far away. The human approached, his face grim, though there was a flicker of admiration in his eyes. "You did well," he said, though it was clear that this was far from over. The planet had far more challenges to offer, and the fight for survival was just beginning. The alien girl wiped the sweat from her brow, the adrenaline still coursing through her veins.
Yes.
"I'm not done yet." And neither was the planet. The alien girl's heart still pounded in her chest, the adrenaline of their narrow escape coursing through her veins. The massive creature they had just fought lay motionless on the forest floor, its body still twitching with the last remnants of life, but the moment of victory was fleeting. The eerie silence that followed only served to heighten the tension, as though the forest was holding its breath, waiting for something far worse to emerge from the shadows. "We need to move," the human said sharply, his voice laced with urgency. The alien girl didn't need to be told twice. Her instincts kicked in, and she sprinted after him without looking back, her legs burning from the exertion of the fight. Her mind was racing. Each footfall felt heavier than the last. The creature they had just taken down was only one of the dangers lurking in this alien wilderness, and the real danger was still out there. Waiting for its turn, they pushed through the dense underbrush, their footsteps muffled by the thick carpet of leaves and moss beneath them. The trees around them seemed to close in, their twisted branches reaching out like grasping fingers, as if trying to trap them in the forest forever. The human led the way, weaving through the trees with practiced ease, his movements swift and precise. But the alien girl was struggling to keep up. Her body was exhausted, her muscles sore from the fight, but there was no time to stop. The planet's dark forces were closing in. As they pressed forward, the ground beneath their feet trembled. Again. This time, it wasn't just the vibrations of the massive creature's final roar, it was something far larger, far more menacing. The ground shook with the force of something coming from deep within the forest, and the air grew heavy with an ominous presence. "Stay close," the human said, his voice barely above a whisper. He glanced over his shoulder, his eyes narrowing. "We're not alone." A low, guttural growl echoed through the trees, sending a chill down the alien girl's spine. She didn't have to ask what it was. She had already seen the Carnivorous. Planton fought the massive creature. It was only a matter of time before something worse emerged from the shadows. Without warning, a dark shape emerged from the thicket. A massive shadow, too large to be a typical animal. It was a creature unlike anything she had ever seen. His body was a writhing mass of tentacles, scales, and sharp, jagged spines that seemed to glimmer in the dim light of the forest. It was enormous, and its eyes glowed with an unnatural, hungry light. The creature's massive maw opened wide, revealing rows of serrated teeth that dripped with venom. It let out a deafening roar that shook the trees around them. This was not a creature they could fight. It was something far worse, something built for destruction. "Run," the human shouted, pulling her by the arm. The alien girl's heart leaped into her throat as they bolted, their footsteps echoing through the trees. The creature's roar rang out behind them, chasing them, and the ground trembled as it gave pursuit. Every instinct told her to run faster, to escape before the creature caught them. but she could feel its hot breath on the back of her neck. The forest seemed to stretch endlessly before them, the path narrowing as the trees grew thicker and more entangled. The human's pace didn't slow, but the alien girl could feel herself growing weaker with each passing second. Her breath was ragged, her body screaming for rest, but there was no time to slow down. The creature was gaining on them. She could hear its massive body crashing through the forest, its tentacles slashing the trees as it moved. She glanced back and saw the monstrous creature rising behind them, its glowing eyes locked on her. Its massive spines gleamed with a deadly intent, and its mouth was wide open, ready to consume them both. Then, ahead, she saw something. A break in the trees, a small clearing that looked like a possible escape route. She pushed herself harder, ignoring the burning pain in her legs as they sprinted toward it. The human's hand tightened around hers as they reached the clearing. But there was no time to celebrate. The creature was too close, its growls deafening. Its tentacles reaching out, nearly brushing against her. They reached the edge of the clearing. But the path beyond was blocked by a massive cliff face. There was nowhere to go, no escape. The creature was almost upon them now, its tentacles stretching forward, ready to strike. The alien girl could feel the heat of its breath on her skin, the power of its attack imminent. There was only one option. Left. She glanced at the human, and for the first time, she saw the same panic in his eyes. He was calculating, thinking quickly, but there was no way out. Not without taking a risk. With no time to waste, he pulled her toward a small gap in the rock face, one barely large enough for them to squeeze through. Go, he urged, shoving her toward the opening. Now, she didn't question him. She dove toward the gap, her body squeezed between the jagged rocks. The creature's massive form was closing in, but she was just in time. For a heartbeat, she thought they had escaped. The creature roared in frustration, but then, just as they thought they were safe, the ground beneath them trembled violently. The cliff began to crack, and the rocks shifted, falling away beneath their feet. With a scream, the alien girl grabbed onto the human, her fingers slipping on the loose rocks. They were falling. The cliffside gave way beneath them, and the ground rushed up to meet them. There was no time to think, only to react. They tumbled down the steep slope, the earth crumbling beneath them, and the terrifying creature's roar echoed in the distance. The fall felt like an eternity, but somehow they landed hard on a bed of soft moss. She gasped for breath, pain shooting through her limbs as she lay there, stunned. The human groaned beside her, his face covered in dirt and sweat. But they had made it. They were alive, for now at least. The alien girl pushed herself up, looking around. They had escaped, but at what cost? The planet was relentless, its dangers endless. The fight for survival was far from over. And she knew, deep down, that this planet had far more to reveal, far more challenges to throw their way. But, for the moment, they had a brief respite, and that was all they needed. The alien girl's legs trembled beneath her as she stood, her body aching from the fall, the near-death experience, and the relentless pursuit of monstrous creatures. But she had made it. She had survived yet another trial on this hostile planet. And for a moment, she let herself breathe deeply and slowly, as though the weight of the world had finally eased. Even if only for a fleeting second, she looked over at the human who had pulled himself up beside her. His face was battered and bruised, a testament to the chaos they had just endured, but his eyes still held that unyielding spark of determination. He had been her guide, her protector in the vast unknown, and he had kept her alive against impossible odds. The quiet that followed the fall was almost eerie. They were in a new part of the forest, one that seemed different from everything they had encountered before. The trees were taller here, their trunks twisted in strange shapes, their bark glistening with a faint blue light that pulsed gently, almost as if alive. A soft wind rustled the leaves, carrying with it the scent of something sweet, almost intoxicating, but the peace was deceptive. The planet wasn't done with them yet. I thought we were done for, the alien girl said, her voice barely above a whisper as she brushed some dirt off her sleeve. We were almost caught. The human nodded, his expression dark but resolute. "This planet's a death trap. But you did well back there. I wasn't sure you could handle it." Her brow furrowed in confusion. Handle it? Survived. He turned to face her fully, his eyes studying her with an intensity that made her feel exposed, as though he could see right through her. "You think that's a weakness?" he asked, his voice low. "It's not. It's the way of survival. You learn to live with the fear. The key is how you handle it when it comes." She stared at him, unsure of how to respond. She had been trained for many things, but not for this wild, untamed world that seemed intent on crushing anything that dared to walk upon it. But there was something in the way he spoke, something in the way he carried himself, that made her want to understand him more. They had only just met, but the connection between them felt deeper than survival alone. "I didn't expect to find anyone here," she said softly, her eyes scanning the strange glowing trees around them. "Why are you still here? Why didn't you leave?" The human paused, his gaze shifting away for a moment, as if he were searching for the right words. The silence between them grew heavier, thick with unspoken truths. "I was supposed to leave," he finally said, his voice low, almost bitter. "But I couldn't. I lost too much. This planet, it took everything from me. I couldn't just walk away." The alien girl felt a twinge of sympathy in her chest. She didn't know what he had. Lost, but she understood loss all too well. Her people had been scattered across the stars, and her journey had been one of survival, always moving, always fighting. She had never truly understood the weight of staying on a single planet, of fighting to survive in one place. Until now, "You've been here ... alone?" she asked, her voice softening. He nodded. "For a long time." There was a long silence between them, the kind that spoke louder than words ever could. In that moment, she realized that they weren't just two strangers trying to survive. They were both broken in their own ways, both trying to hold on to something that felt out of reach. They weren't enemies, but they weren't friends either. Not yet, but they could be something more. "What's your name?" she asked, her voice quiet, as if breaking the silence with something as simple as a question might change everything. The human turned to face her fully, his eyes meeting hers. For the first time since she had met him, he seemed to let his guard down just a little. "Eli?" The alien girl nodded slowly, testing the name on her tongue. "Eli." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "And you?" "I don't have a name," she replied, a small chuckle escaping her lips. "Where I come from, we don't use names the way you do. We are simply who we are." He raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "And who are you then?" She thought for a moment, her gaze drifting back to the strange, glowing trees around them. "I'm someone who's trying to find her place, trying to survive, like everyone else." Eli studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. "Maybe that's enough," he said quietly, almost to himself. Before she could respond, a sudden crash from deep within the forest snapped both their heads toward the sound. The air shifted, the gentle pulse of the trees fading into a distant hum. Someone was coming. The tension between them thickened, and Eli was on his feet in an instant, grabbing his blade. "We don't have much time. We need to go now." The alien girl nodded, her instincts firing once more. She didn't need to ask questions. The planet was never done with them, and they had to keep moving if they wanted to survive. The connection between them was still new, fragile, but in this moment, she knew one thing for sure. They were in this together, as they moved through the forest. The urgency of the situation pressing down on them, she realized that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as alone as she had thought. Eli had saved her life, and she had saved his. In a world as unforgiving as this one, that was enough to forge a bond stronger than mere survival, and in the distance, beyond the trees, they could already hear the sound of something new, something worse waiting for them. But for the first time since landing on this cursed planet, she didn't feel entirely helpless. She had someone by her side, and that made all the difference.